Thanks for staying with us. And Bill O'Reilly in the Unresolved Problem segment tonight. As we just reported, violence in Milwaukee broke out after a black police officer shot and killed a black man who the cops say had a gun. The Milwaukee County Sheriff, David Clark, reacted this way.
Here's what causes riots. We have inescapable poverty in the city of Milwaukee. Milwaukee's like the 6th poorest city in America. You have massive black unemployment. I think it's at 32%. You have a failing K-12 public education system. It's one of the worst in the nation. You have questionable lifestyle choices. Some of this is self-inflicted. All these kids with no fathers around. Father-absent homes. When fathers aren't around to shape the behavior of young men, they oftentimes grow up to be unmanageable misfits. Those are the ingredients. Milwaukee has all of them. All this police shooting did, of an armed individual, by the way. When 4 other murders happened the night before and you didn't see this sort of reaction.
Joining us now from Washington, Charles Krauthammer. So the sheriff went on to say that he believes the welfare system, the social entitlements that are encouraged by the progressive community and the Democratic Party in particular, have really eroded the social structure in the African-American community. First of all, do you believe that? And second, how has that happened?
Well, I don't believe it caused it. I do believe it exacerbated it in a very obvious way. The sheriff is absolutely right. The root cause of all this is the breakdown of the community and the family and the black family. That's what he's talking about. That's what Pat Moynihan, the famous liberal senator and professor of sociology at Harvard, wrote in 1965, a report for which he was viciously attacked and even ostracized because he pointed to the breakdown of the black family. The major task of any society, of any family, overall, the organization of society, is to socialize young men, to civilize them. That's what the family is for, that's what society is for. If you fail at that, you fail at everything. And what Moynihan pointed out in 1965 was to an illegitimacy epidemic. Do you know what the number was at the time? 24%. You know what it is now among African Americans? 70% nationally. In some of the cities, 80 to 90%. The sheriff is absolutely right. Fatherlessness, no one, not just to be the role model, but to be the disciplinarian. You saw that clip of the father of the guy who was shot in Milwaukee, that guy, Mr. Smith. The father saying, I'm at fault. I wasn't there, he was
I was in jail. The father had it, right.
So at that point, the kid, the boy, has so little chance. Add to that the schools that are corrupt, controlled by the teachers union, give the worst education. No liberal in America would agree to have a child in that school, and they don't.
But how does the payment system, the welfare system, how does that erode?
Let me explain.
Go ahead.
When FDR instituted the aid to families with dependent children, it was intended to subsidize widows raising kids. It was never intended to what it ended up being in the 60s, 70s, 80s, to be a subsidy for illegitimacy. What was discovered was that if you had a child, you were unmarried in your late teens, early 20s, and as long as you didn't have a man in the house, not just unmarried, people used to hide the boyfriends. They would run away when the social worker showed up, because if there's a man in the house, you lost your payments. It was the worst incentive you can imagine. Well-meaning government trying to subsidize a single mother, trying to raise her kids, very hard to do. But what it created was a cash payment system where essentially if you had an illegitimate child, no one to help you out in the house, you were subsidized. The government essentially became your providing husband.
And the more kids you had, the more money you got.
And you created a new generation.
Okay.
With no father, no role model, increasing poverty, desperation, and all the pathology that we talk about today. It is a tragedy because it was all well intended.
But the Progressive Party will never admit that. They will never say, gee, you know, we were well intended, but it didn't work, and now we have to look at another way.
Well, Bill Clinton did.
He did in a
signed
way.
The welfare reform in 1996.
Right, but that was based on work.
Attached it. Yes, that attached it to work, and that revolutionized welfare.
This is based on something else This is based on morality. Now, Clark basically says, Sheriff Clark, that the black community in America has to solve the problem itself, that the government can't. So if African Americans want a better society, all right, they have to confront this growing problem of the deterioration of the family. Do you think that will ever happen?
Look, that has always been true. It's true for every community. It's been made worse by the policies of the government. The problem for us is everybody is aware of the problem, but no one knows. There's no political solution to what would have to be a reformation, sort of a re-spiritualization, if you like, of these communities that are suffering so much. The sources of strength, of course, are the churches, some of the community organizations, and that's where all that has to come from. But I think there are a few things the government can do at the margins. The first was reforming welfare, which Obama has largely undone the worker requirement. And second, what we need to talk about is to try to salvage at least some of the students by giving them educational choice.
The vouchers and
so
stuff like
you can
that.
Start by working from the outside.
All right.
You can start by doing those things. But the rest, unfortunately, is up to a community that is in very dire straits.
All right, Charles, thank you very much.